Twinkle, twinkle, little star,
He's alive!
Welcome to Where the Weird Ones Are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run. Run home and cry to mama.
Let's get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Today's episode is a little bit different. It's not really like encounter stories or anything. Orin did a dive on a figure in history, and his name is Jack Parsons. So Jack Parsons, obviously, if you don't know, he's affiliated with Aleister Crowley and Hubbard, who Hubbard started Scientology, and Aleister Crowley is a crazy motherfucking demon. But no, yeah. So he did a bunch of research on Jack Parsons and came up with some interesting stuff. So, if you don't get enough out of this episode, you should go to Bizarre Encounters and look up the Jack Parsons series, which is 3 episodes that they covered this guy. So, I mean, we didn't cover everything in this episode, so I mean, would have gone a little bit longer, but I just wanted to get like the basis and stuff because I really enjoyed those episodes. I listened to Bizarre Encounters religiously, so it's a good show, and if you haven't checked it out, you probably fucking should. So, with that being said, I will be vending in Hamlet, North Carolina at Encounter Quest. I'm starting a side hustle, and that's hot sauce. And hopefully my comic will be out by April, but no guarantees. So yeah, I'll be vending, the t-shirts and shit and the hot sauce, and then hopefully the book. But everybody that was interested in helping me out, put on my own event in my neck of the woods, there is an event that is coming up in my neck of the woods in June. So you should, if you were interested in supporting my event, I will humbly ask you to go support this one. Because I scrapped mine and I'm supporting this one because we don't need 2 events back to back in the same town. So it is called 40 and Fest, and it's happening right here in Sanford, Maine, at our local gymnasium. And they are looking for vendors and speakers. So speakers more so if you're in the area, probably. But I don't know, just message them. So you can find it on Facebook, 40 and Fest on Facebook. And you can sign up to be a vendor. You can get your tickets to be, just a, what the fuck is the word? God damn it. I hate it when words fucking escape me. When you're just an attendee or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But also message them if you're interested in being a speaker, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, But they're good people. Paranormal 5. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram. So, yeah. So it'll be fun. It'll be a good time. I guarantee it. June 8th, it'll be nice and warm out. It's a Saturday. It's 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's not a terribly long day. So, yeah. Yeah. If you're interested, I'm going to talk about it until the day the event until after the event, like that week, that Wednesday before any shows that come out, any episodes that come out that week before, I'm going to be talking about it all the way into June. So, just to keep reminding you guys. But yeah, so follow Orin if you're interested, the Framework UFO, his partner Jenny, who wasn't a part of this episode, but she was dearly missed because she had to work. And she goes by 100% that witch, and there's some underscores in there, and her hair is always purty. I just have to tell you that. But anyways, so I hope you enjoy today's episode. I definitely enjoyed talking to Orin about it and listening to the episodes they did on Bizarre Encounters on this subject. And I hope you check out Bizarre Encounters and Inquiries of Our Reality. It's pretty good. Check out I Want to Believe with Nomar Slevik. That's a good podcast. The Conversation Cabin, obviously. Haunts Cast, that's a good one too that I like, and Cryptid Warfare. Like, if you're not listening to Cryptid Warfare, then you are a fucking loser. No, I'm just kidding. I love you. But yeah, if you like today's show, please like, follow, share, subscribe, do all that stuff to help this show grow, because I would appreciate it. I would also appreciate a rating and a review. I'll read it. I'll read the reviews if I fucking see it. I can't remember if it was how many episodes did it go to. Maybe the last one with 305 Black Smoke and Joe. I think I might have mentioned it. And no, I think it was the episode before that where Arnie wrote a review and I didn't see it until like 2 weeks ago. And he wrote it back in February, but I'll try. And if you guys want to leave a review, I will read it on here in the intro. So, with that being said, again, for the merch, it's etsy.com/shop/where the weird ones are. Follow me on Instagram where_ the weird ones are, and Facebook where the weird ones are. So, without further ado, motherfuckers, let's get into it.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Weird. Get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that. And if you did not, now you do. So today's episode is kind of like a deep dive. I've heard Orin and Shane talk about this on their podcast, and I wanted to give Orin the opportunity, since he did the research, to come on and share it with everybody that listens to this show. I found it intriguing. I always find, this stuff particularly fascinating. So I definitely wanted you guys to all hear it. So Orin, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, let them know where they can find you and the podcast.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on again. It's always a blast to hang out and talk with you. Hadn't got a chance to hang out with you in a while, so thanks for having me on again. So I'm Orin Felix. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Bizarre Encounters podcast. My other co-host is Shane Jones. He was, cool enough to ask me to join the show about a year ago. My partner Jenny, she's been on the show here and there throughout the past year. She's taking a little break from the show right now, but hopefully she'll be back soon. But yeah, so Bizarre Encounters. You can find us on all the podcast platforms, Instagram, all that good stuff. And my Instagram is the Framework UFO. So if you want to find my personal one, that's me. But yeah, there's all that good stuff. So
Nice. If you're not following Orin or his partner Jenny, they're both amazing people. I absolutely adore them, and I cherish their friendship very much. So
and likewise.
Thanks. If you guys ever need to bounce any ideas or anything like that, or just want to have a casual conversation, I'm sure they're open to it. They're super nice. So definitely go check them out. And Bizarre Encounters is an amazing podcast that I actually listen to religiously. I don't miss an episode. So it comes out every Wednesday, right?
Absolutely. And thank you for giving us a shout out and listening to the show. I mean, I've heard, some of the episodes you did with Shane, and y'all have some awesome conversations and go pretty deep with the theory. So I think anybody who likes your show will kind of dig ours, and vice versa. So
yeah. Shane's definitely an intellectual kind of a person, and talking with him is always interesting. So, and I like the banter that you guys have, because I feel like you make the show pretty fun. So you just have like the I love life kind of like character to you. So it's always nice.
Well, maybe I'm just
but anyway,
faking it so I make it. But no, that's what we try to do. I mean, some podcasts, it seems like it's like somebody reciting a textbook, and some of them, they're just constantly just joking and, shooting the shit. And we try to find a nice balance between the two. You can be informative and get into some stuff, but still have fun with it. So
absolutely. So the topic that I brought Orin on to talk about today is Jack Parsons. For those of you that don't know who Jack Parsons is, he was a what is it, a rocketeer?
Yeah, so he was kind of like one of the fathers of early American rocketry. Like some of his rocket designs are still, largely being used by NASA today. He was one of the founders, kind of through a series of different, experiments and steps and whatnot. But he was one of the founders of Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which was actually like the precursor of NASA. And then when NASA was founded, JPL got kind of intertwined in with NASA. So basically, this guy is one of the, 2 or 3 biggest figures in American rocketry. And a lot of people don't even know about him. I didn't know about him until about a year ago when I heard him mentioned on the Hellbent Holler podcast, which is an awesome podcast. I'm sure your listeners are probably familiar with that one too. But kind of why it seems like he's kind of swept under the rug a little bit is he was into some pretty out there shit. Like he was basically an occultist, a practicing magician, a super hardcore follower of Aleister Crowley, and had some ties with like Hubbard and Scientology and all that. So just a crazy dude. I made the joke. So first off, we did like a 3-part series on Jack Parsons on our show. So I'm going to try to make it, the Cliff Notes version on this one. But I kind of made the joke in our series, screw the Dos Equis guy. Jack Parsons was the real most interesting man in the world. So, and I stand by that. So.
Yeah. Well, Aleister Crowley always had fascinated me, and I knew a little bit about Jack Parsons, but then when I heard your guys' this 3-part series, um, I was like, damn, this guy's fucking weird.
Yeah.
But because like we have Jack Parsons and Werner von Braun that was into the NASA and the rocketry and all that
Yeah, and
stuff.
supposedly like Parsons and von Braun were like exchanging correspondence when Parsons was young. So, that's kind of a weird connection there, if you ask me.
That is weird. And I find it fascinating too that he ended up hooking up with L. Ron Hubbard too, because Scientology and shit.
Yeah,
So,
like he's just got his fingers in like so many different things. And for somebody that like you don't really ever hear about, like people know about, like Scientology and shit because of, Hollywood, and people know about Crowley and all that. But this guy like was intertwined in all these different circles and just never really gets talked about. So that's kind of why I wanted to do the episode on him. And then the more I started researching, I just fell down so many rabbit holes with this guy. And I was like, this is going to end up being a series. This is way more than one episode. Like I read, 2 books. I read everything on the internet I could find about it, so it ended up taking months to put all this together, but I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. I think it was, a lot of fun to research, if nothing else. So, I mean, even if people didn't enjoy listening to it, I enjoyed doing the research.
well, I enjoyed listening to it. I think that's all that matters is that I enjoyed it. So
I would agree. So,
I'm number 1 fan. So
hey, you're number 1 in my heart, man.
it makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
Mm.
All right, Orin. If you don't mind, let's take the listeners on a little journey on about Jack Parsons and starting from the beginning.
Okay, so like I said, I'm going to try to abridge this as much as possible. But if you guys are interested in hearing more, definitely check out the series we did. Like I said, Hellbent Holler, they did a little bit on him in episode 7 of their show. And Hollow Sky did kind of a whole series on the Collins Elite and Jack Parson. And we're going to talk about that a little bit toward the end. But anyway, so running through this quickly. Jack Parsons was born in 1914 in Los Angeles, and his parents got divorced shortly after he was born because his mother found out that his father visited prostitutes. So that's kind of ironic for things we're going to talk about a little bit later. So then his mother's wealthy parents moved to California to kind of take care of him and his mom. And they bought this mansion on Orange Grove Boulevard in Pasadena. So when Parsons was young, he was kind of into like science fiction and rocketry and also the occult. And when he was 13, he claimed that he attempted a ritual to invoke the devil. And he feared that it was successful. And so he stopped doing these kind of occult activities for several years after that. And this is one of my favorite parts. When he was talking about this whole, ritual and invoking the devil and all that years later, he referred to it as a magical fiasco, which, as I said in our series, is my new favorite way of describing everything. So that's just a magical fiasco. Have me bust out my my patent pending Jack Parsons voice. So
do it again. I think I talked over you.
A magical fiasco. But I'll just keep on rolling if you want me to, and if you want to jump in at any point, please do. So
absolutely.
So when Parsons got a little bit older, he met a boy at school named Edward S. Foreman, and they began conducting homemade experiments with gunpowder-based rockets. Which, what could possibly go wrong? These 2 little kids just blowing up rockets with gunpowder.
Yeah, right. So, how old were they again?
Like high school age, like middle school, high school age. They were young, like not old enough to be handling gunpowder and blowing up rockets, probably. But hey, it was the 20s. It was a different time. But so in the midst of all this, Parsons' grades in school began to decline. So his mother sent him away to military school, but he was soon expelled because he blew up a toilet. So, this guy just can't stop himself.
That kind of sounds like, dude, if I was smart enough to build some bombs, I feel like that's probably something that I would do, is blowing up toilets, especially in school. Like,
And military school? I mean,
yeah, that's right. It was military school. Maybe
Yeah.
not military school, but in public school, yes, definitely. Probably, yeah, no, military school, probably not.
well, Jack did, and he got expelled.
Jeez, what was he doing? Did his parents like specifically put him in military school? Do you know, like?
I guess just because his grades were plummeting in school, and it was basically, I think, because he was spending so much time focusing on rocket experiments. Like, he wasn't focusing on his schooling, and his grades were declining. So his mom was like, "We're going to ship him off to military school to kind of get him in line," and then he starts blowing up toilets. So it didn't work. But anyway, so around this time, Jack's grandfather died, and this was around the Depression. So they lost much of their family's fortune. So after high school, he began working at Hercules Powder Company, which was an explosives manufacturer. And so when he was working there, he learned more about explosives and whatnot. And him and his buddy Ed Foreman continued experimenting with rockets. And like we said a little bit in the intro, around this time, they were having correspondence with a lot of prominent rocket engineers like Werner von Braun, and then Robert Goddard, who is going to come up a little bit later if we get to that. But anyway, around the same time, Parsons also met a young woman named Helen Northrup at a local church dance, which I think is funny, also in light of some things we're going to get into. And they were married in April of 1935. So moving on a little bit, this is a kind of a side tangent, but it's going to kind of introduce some characters to the story. So the Guggenheim Aeronautical Laboratory, California Institute of Technology, or GALCIT, which doesn't really roll off the tongue. It was founded. No, it does not. They could have thought of a snappier name, which they eventually did. But anyway, so this was like an early rocketry kind of program at Caltech. And the director of it was a man named Theodore von Karman. And so von Karman allowed Parsons and Foreman access to the GALCIT lab. And he introduced them to one of the grad students there, and his name was Frank J. Molina. And Molina started referring to him and Parsons and Foreman as the group. And so together they kind of started developing and working on liquid-fueled rockets. And around this same time, Frank Molina was invited to visit Robert Goddard, who we talked about just a few minutes ago, his rocket facility, which was located in Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh,
and
shit.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is in the 20s and like late 1928, I think. So this is before, the whole Roswell incident. Yeah. So on Halloween night of 1936, the group tested their first liquid-fueled rocket. And the experiment was viewed as a success, and they were granted permission to move their rocket testing to Caltech's campus, and they were given more funding. But this was kind of also short-lived because the campus residents quickly grew to hate the group because they were just blowing shit up in the middle of the school. And so they started calling them the Suicide Squad and not the, shitty DC movie.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's where the comic got that name from.
I mean, I almost think it has to be. I mean, it's too specific, I would think, but I could not find anything that confirmed or denied that. So in 1938, Parsons was called upon to be an expert witness in a murder trial. And it was basically these three police officers were convicted of planting a pipe bomb in another officer's car. And so Parsons was called on by the police department to be like an expert witness on explosives. And so his testimony helped to convict these guys. And it's theorized that this whole situation might have something to do with his death. That comes later in the story. So
Right. That's weird. So wait, backtrack. What happened? What happened again with the trial?
So there was the situation in, I think it was the Los Angeles County Police Department. And basically there are these like two corrupt cops, or three officers, excuse me. There were three like corrupt cops, and they planted a bomb in the car of another officer to basically get rid of him. And the police department, whomever, contacted, Gausset, this explosives lab, and asked for like their best explosives expert to like, look at all the evidence and give their expert opinion on, hey, what do you think happened with this explosion and whatnot? And, they called on Jack Parsons, and he basically said, yeah, these guys blew this other guy up, and they got convicted and sent to jail for it, or prison, I guess, at that point.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. I know I'm kind of just breezing through things, but I don't want this to take 4 hours.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But no, whenever you need to jump in, please do. So
yeah, I just wanted to, like, because sometimes I'm listening, but sometimes for some reason, like, it doesn't register.
Well, and I'm throwing out like a lot of names and figures and terms fast and furious. So
yeah, so real quick, does the name of the kid that he was with when he was blowing up toilets, is that name significant?
So Ed Foreman was his name. They were just like childhood friends, and basically they kind of stayed in touch for the rest of Parsons' life, and he kind of worked with him through these various like companies and business ventures that they had together. So they're basically just like lifelong buddies, pretty much, or as long as Parsons lived, which wasn't that long.
But it wasn't.
But yeah, so Foreman, he's going to keep popping up throughout the story.
Okay.
But so around this time, they started to research jet propulsion, which was a term they coined themselves. And they chose this term because around this time, there was a real big stigma around like rockets and rocketry. It was basically considered just like science fiction bullshit that, could never happen. So they came up with jet propulsion to kind of, combat that stigma. And the military was interested in developing what they called jet-assisted takeoff technology, or JATO, which that rolls off the tongue a little bit better than Gausset.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this was like when airplanes would have rockets attached to their wings to aid in like short runway takeoffs or to like get away from fighters in the air. So basically the government was interested in pursuing this technology. So they gave a grant to Jack Parsons and his buddies to kind of see how feasible this was and to start doing research on how to develop this rocket technology. And so with this initial grant that they were given, which was $10,000, they had to spend a lot of that repairing buildings at Caltech that they had damaged with their earlier experiments, which I thought was pretty funny. So, yeah, so blowing up toilets and blowing up buildings on campus. And yeah, this guy was just full of magical fiascos. So, their budget kept increasing and they kept doing this research. And during this time, Parsons kind of went back into the world of the occult and he became interested in the work of Aleister Crowley. And I'm kind of just going to breeze through the Crowley stuff because I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar enough with him.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers that he came up with through his book, like for his rituals, keep popping up in like all these like major disasters. Like 9/11 is a big example of it, like the number 77, and then the death the fucking whatever, the death. What the fuck is the word? The
I'm not sure.
I know, I know you. I know.
I'm trying to
you know,
help you, man.
I know. It's death curse. What's wrong with me?
No, your
Death
mic cut
curse.
out. I didn't. What was it?
A death curse.
Oh, yeah.
The number 42 is a death curse, and
Okay.
number 42 is like involved with a lot of like these major disasters and stuff. Like you can always find 42. And I cover this in the latest Conspiracy Tuesday, which will be out by the time this episode airs. So if you're interested in hearing a little bit about that, which I don't really get into depth about it, but um we basically have decided that maybe this the world isn't really controlled by a secret organization. It's controlled by spirits. And this is just one big simulation because all these numbers keep repeating, which is how Aleister Crowley knew about these numbers because he tapped in to like he started recognizing these numbers, you know what I mean, from the simulation because they just keep coming up and they keep coming up and they keep repeating. That's why history repeats. That's why we're in like the Roman Empire era of today. So I don't know.
So it's basically just like the programming repeating itself pretty much.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And I think he just like he was so into history and stuff, and learning all this like a magical shit that he just picked up on it and he wrote about it and he did these silly ass rituals, which none of that stuff makes sense, but like his number stuff kind of is like that's like eerie, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and it seems like numerology is like a big thing in the occult. Like certain numbers are like really important to these rituals and whatnot. So no, that's really cool. I'm definitely gonna have to check out that episode. Is that the one that Shane was on?
Yeah. And
okay, cool.
We threw up. He's like he's the simulation, like I wouldn't say expert, but like he talks a lot about simulation theory. So I was happy. I'm pretty glad that I touched on it while he was involved. So I'm starting to think that the world isn't ruled by a secret society or reptilian people anymore. Like I'm starting to think that, like, granted I'm not like decided on it or anything, but I'm starting to think that just the simulation is that we're in a simulation essentially. So these numbers just keep coming up. They keep coming up over and over and over and over again with all this stuff. And like I talked about certain situations like 666, if you find or 333, if you find a story in the media that's 33 or there's a 3, it's 33 or 66, there's always a hidden 6 and there's always a hidden 3. So
well, I'm by no means an expert in any of the simulation stuff, but just the fact that a whole lot of people, a whole lot smarter than you and I, either outright believe this or at least entertain the possibility. There might be more to it than I think meets the eye at first.
For sure. And obviously Aleister Crowley was not a good dude, and I'm not saying that in any way, but I think he was onto something. No, yeah, I'm just gonna say that
it's possible he tapped into something, and that's kind of one of the big things that keeps popping up in this whole story is you can tap into things and might not really know what the hell you're actually tapping into. These dudes could have been in contact with something. Was it these entities they thought they were in contact with? Who the hell knows? But like you said, I think there's things out there that, whether they be gods, aliens, whoever's running the simulation, I think you can tap into stuff, long story short.
we probably will never even know for sure. So,
and hey, the thing I've said is like, I think simulation theory is like the one thing that would really surprise me at this point. Like if like aliens came down tomorrow, I wouldn't be that surprised. If Bigfoot walked across the street while I was driving to work tomorrow, I wouldn't be that surprised. Like that's the one thing that I think would be like tough for me to wrap my head around at this point.
Yeah, I'd be like, what?
yeah, that one's just like a mind fuck to me for some reason. Like
if I'm walking down a trail and then all of a sudden the simulation is having a hard time keeping up with me walking down the trail, and it's all of a sudden this blank space, I'm gonna be like, yeah. Then there's this big circle like right in front of me that says buffering.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be like, what?
The simulation is running an update.
Do you need healing crystals? Do you need to get your chakras aligned and heal your mind, body, and soul? You need to check yourself and become one with the universe once again. Then I suggest you head on over to www.etsy.com/shop/heal with Christina. That's where you'll find all sorts of custom designed crystals for your healing and visual pleasure. I promise you won't be disappointed with the plethora of things you can choose from. Necklaces, healing crystals, all sorts of wire type things and such. Christina is a good friend of mine and she enjoys helping people, so please help her out by checking out her shop. And at checkout, please use code WEIRD125 for a 25% off discount. That is www.etsy.com/shop/heal with Christina. And remember, friends, use my coupon code WEIRD125. That is a capital W on that, so you can get your 25% off discount. I promise you, you won't be disappointed in checking this out. Well, my friends, when you do, tell Christina I said hi. Stay weird, my friends.
My daughter, so I had my daughter on for an intro not too long ago, and she was talking about how her and her friends talk about at school that we all actually died in 2012, and ever since 2012 it's been a computer generated simulation.
Well, there is like, and I'm going to butcher this, but there's like some theory that the world goes in phases or eras and whatnot, and there's a theory that maybe the world didn't end in 2012, but we entered some kind of new era or new cycle or phase of the earth. So yeah. I mean, I think that's very possible.
Yeah, I agree
but so. I don't know, some of that, like, I'm sure you've seen like the little reels and stuff, and I don't know if this is straight simulation theory, but pretty close, where like people will film like a mirror in their living room and like the lights clearly not on the ceiling fan, but in the mirror the lights on, like shit like that, like the glitch in the Matrix type stuff. Like yeah. I think all that stuff's pretty cool too.
Bird stuck in the sky. Just
yeah. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff is bullshit, but like with everything else we talk about, if 10% of it is true, that's a lot of weird shit going on out there.
Absolutely. So Sorry for the side tangent.
Hey man, I'm here for the side tangents. You know that. That's the fun stuff. But so we kind of covered Crowley pretty good. The one thing I'll throw in is, in addition to all the weird stuff that he's widely known for, he was the founder of a spiritual movement known as the Church of Thelema. And the central text of Thelema was known as the Book of the Law. And then Crowley also was the head of a secret society / magical organization called the Ordo Templi Orientis, which I'm going to just call the OTO from here on out.
I thought you were going to say the church called Magical Fiasco.
I mean, that would have been a better name. That would be Jack Parsons Church. Or if I ever start a church, that's what I'm going to call it. But anyway, so there was an OTO lodge in Los Angeles. And Jack Parsons and his wife, Helen, kind of became involved in this lodge through his interest in the occultism or the occult and Crowleyism and whatnot. And so they started going to meetings and kind of participating in the rituals and whatnot at this church / secret society, whatever you want to call it. So kind of jumping back into more of his professional career, in 1941, his kind of rocketry group had their first successful tests of these JATO-equipped airplanes, which was what, the government was trying to get them to work on. And, this led to huge breakthroughs, a lot of funding. And at this time, Parsons and Ed Foreman, his buddy that we talked about, they left Galset and they formed a company called the Aerojet Corporation. And so Aerojet started receiving a lot of government funding, and by 1943, they were operating on a budget of $650,000, which is like staggering to me in 1943 dollars,
Yeah, that's a lot of money for that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money now, but we're talking 80 years ago. That's crazy. So
do you know offhand like the equivalent of what that would be today?
I don't. I should have looked it up. We tried to do some half-ass internet conversion rates while we were recording our episode, and I don't know if we ever quite figured out what it was. But anyway,
How much
it's a
was it
shitload
again?
of money. It's $650,000.
So 650. 650. What's the year?
1943.
For the silence, everybody, I'm looking something up.
Everyone's just waiting with bated breath to figure out how much money this is. Do you want me to start singing or doing funny voices or something? Talking about magical fiascos?
Yeah. 11 million.
So yeah, these dudes were operating on an $11 million budget to build rockets. So
yeah.
Anyway, a lot of this money Parsons was kind of funneling to Crowley in England and funneling this money through the OTO. And so through this, he kind of rose up the ranks quickly. And eventually he leased a mansion on Orange Grove Boulevard, which was, only a few blocks from his childhood home. And this kind of became the headquarters for the OTO. And it was referred to as the parsonage. And at this point in time, the guy who was the head of the OTO was removed by Crowley, and Jack Parsons was put in charge. And also around this time, and again, not saying that these guys weren't doing some weird, kinky, bad shit, but this is just funny to me. So Jack's wife, Helen, went away on an extended vacation. And while she was gone, Jack started having a sexual relationship with Helen's 17-year-old sister, Sarah.
That's weird.
Yeah. And so when Helen got back from her trip, Sarah, her sister, informed her that she was Jack's new wife And then Jack said that he found Sarah more sexually exciting than Helen. So him and Helen, go their separate ways. And Helen actually started dating the guy who was the head of the OTO. And they had a long-term relationship and had a kid together and stuff. So this is just a really incestuous, interconnected situation here. They were basically just having the, OTO key party pretty much.
Christ, man, how old was Jack Parsons at this time?
I mean, I think he was still in his 20s because I think he was 37 when he died. So, but either way, the girl was 17.
Yeah, either way, she was 17. She's not emotionally developed yet.
And, I get that this was a long time ago. People were a little bit more lenient about that sort of thing back then, but it's still.
Yeah, they were a little more lenient for younger too, which kind of scares me. And I'm glad that we don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Hey, 17 years old. She was past her prime at that point. You got to get her married off. But
she wasn't at 17 back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why isn't she married with child already?
Several
know.
At that point. She should have one on the hip and one on the way. But
yeah.
So around the same time, Aerojet was sold to the General Tire and Rubber Company, and they basically did not like how Parsons and Foreman were operating, all the occult shit he was into, and then he was just he wasn't a stickler for rules and safety and things like that. So basically they tried to force these guys out of their own company after they bought stock in the company. And Parsons was totally cool with that. He, cashed in his stock, and he said that after the war, rocket technology would become obsolete. And so him and his buddy Ed planned to start a chain of laundromats, which they believed would be more financially successful than rockets, which I think this is funny too. This guy is like, fuck rockets. I'm going to go with laundromats. So this guy was, this guy was nothing if not a dreamer. Some of his ideas might have been a little kooky, but he was an ideal.
For the time, but I feel like some of it might have that would have worked out if he had stayed alive.
Yeah, which, as we will see, he did not. So anyway, with the money that him and Foreman got, apart from their laundromat money, which they never really started their chain of laundromats, but they also started a company that manufactured explosives, and they called it Ad Astra Research. But this company was investigated by the FBI, which we're going to see pop up a lot in Jack's story, that the FBI is just on this guy all the time. So the FBI was investigating them because they were caught with a large quantity of chemicals that were used in a top secret project for a material known as X metal. And I said in our series, that's the most made up sounding thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
X metal. So that sounds like some X-Men Marvel shit to me. But the charges were eventually dropped, which we will also see as a recurring thing with Jack. And Galset was expanded and officially renamed Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And so this JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, this is what is the precursor to NASA. So basically, everything that we've talked about before, or kind of the baby steps, the training wheels, if you will, to get us to NASA. And this guy was a founding figure in all these things that led to NASA. And I said, he's never really talked about.
Wow. Yeah, no, he's not. That's interesting.
And if you got anything to throw in before I get to my favorite part in the story.
No, go right ahead, man.
All right.
Do your thing.
So, around this point in time, Jack Parsons was introduced to science fiction author and the future founder of the Church of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. And so, we could do a whole deep dive on L. Ron Hubbard and kind of what a sleazy guy he was. So I'm not going to get into that, but, basically, long story short, in a story that has just a bunch of occult devil wizards running around, L. Ron Hubbard's like the shittiest dude in this story, as far as I'm concerned. So I probably can't go to Hollywood now because I've said this, but whatever. There goes my acting career.
Fuck Scientology. I'll say it too, man.
So Hubbard moved into the parsonage with Jack, and he kind of was dabbling in the occult and the OTO and whatnot, but he never fully joined. But Jack's woman, Sarah, who again was the younger sister of his first wife, she became enamored with Hubbard. And so basically her and Hubbard just had this, I guess you could call it an affair, like right under Jack's nose in the house he was living in. So this, didn't sit too well with Jack. Jack said through all his occult rituals and, all this free love that was going on, that he had kind of elevated himself beyond the hang on, I've got the quote here. I should have had it ready. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. He had elevated beyond the jealousies of a common man, which, that was all well and good till his buddy started fucking his girl. And then he decided that he had not. So, this was really bothering Jack. And so he started doing like magical, like banishing rituals to try to get over this, whole affair that was going on. And he viewed those as a success. And so him and Ron stayed friends and business partners.
Personally, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, I mean, we're not Jack Parsons, though. We have not evolved beyond the jealousies of a common man. So
no, I guess not. I guess not.
So on January 4th of 1946, Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard began a series of magical rituals they dubbed the Babylon working. And so this working was an elaborate, like, sexual magic experiment that they were doing. And according to them, this is all allegedly, this is according to these guys. It was designed to ultimately bring about the Thelemite goddess Babylon into physical manifestation. And I don't claim to know all the details of all of this stuff. But so Parsons was basically trying to bring about a physical entity that he thought was going to like usher in this new age of enlightenment and free love and, kind of everybody love everybody type stuff, which is kind of interesting to me because, this is the 40s we're talking about. That kind of happened not so long after this. Yeah. So again, these guys might have kind of tapped into something without knowing really what they were tapping into. So as part of these rituals, basically there's a lot of masturbating involved. So he would like masturbate and, he had these magical tablets and he would like consecrate these tablets, which means jacking off onto them. And so he did this twice a day for 12 consecutive days. And L. Ron Hubbard acted as what he calls his scribe, quote unquote, which is
this onto this on these tablets with his jizz. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. And L. Ron Hubbard was just kind of observing all. He was sitting in the corner, being the voyeur, pretty much, allegedly. That is
so fucking weird.
Yeah, he could have been more of a participant. We don't know.
Oh, gross.
But anyway, so like while he was doing his jack off rituals, like people in the house said that like weird things started happening, like there were sudden power outages and there were sightings of orbs and even a metallic buzzing voice was reported that was saying, "Let me go free." And I think that's kind of interesting because in a lot of like the Men in Black type stuff, people talk about like this metallic voice that these entities have. So again, possible these guys kind of tapped into something without knowing what they were tapping into.
Yeah. Before you go on too, so this isn't factual. I don't know if this is true or what, but I have read and heard a podcast on this, and some other stories, but Freemason, when you're initiated into being a Freemason, like a real Freemason,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know what the term means by real Freemason, or maybe it's like the real actual like secret organization, not like
Yeah, like the higher
because
degrees or whatever.
yeah, something like that. But so to be initiated, the initiate has to lay down in a coffin.
I've heard this
While
too.
yeah, while all the members circle around and then they jerk off onto that person. So
Yeah. So
uh,
it's a ritual. They're consecrating.
like that, just that when you said that, like that's what it reminds me of. So I figured I'd just throw it out there.
Yeah, and I did find in some of my research for this that Aleister Crowley was a 33rd degree Freemason, and a lot of these rituals and stuff are based in Thelemic Crowley type ideas. So I mean, there could definitely be a connection there.
Yeah, sounds like it. Sounds like it
Yeah,
to me. Anyway,
that's good. So in the midst of this whole Babylon working, a woman arrived at Jack's house, and her name was Marjorie Cameron. And Parsons believed that she was like this, elemental entity that he was trying to manifest. And he referred to her as his Scarlet Woman. And he thought that like through her, he was going to be able to bring about, this goddess Babylon, who, like I said, was going to, usher in this new age of enlightenment and understanding and free love. So in the midst of all this, Parsons went out to the Mojave Desert. And this was all part of his attempts to invoke Babylon. And he claimed at that point in time that he was visited by a supernatural entity. And it commanded him to write a book called Liber 49, which he claimed was the fourth part of Crowley's Book of the Law, which I think is where a lot of like the numerology and stuff you were talking about earlier comes from, if I'm not mistaken. So I haven't read any of those, but I think, it's kind of all in there, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so too. I haven't read them either, but I kind of want to now. Just that because he keeps coming up like in everything, like his books and his numerology stuff, and it just keeps the more stories that I look into, he's there in some kind of way. So it's interesting.
No, like we said, I think it's just how interconnected these guys were with so many different things and so many different people, and like just circles that you would think have no connection at all. It's kind of like a 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon type thing. Like these guys connect rocketry with occultism, which is really interesting to things we talk about a lot now about like CE5 type stuff, and how to manifest or bring about these type of entities. It's not through technology and beaming shit out into space. It's basically people meditating,
That's pretty
or doing ritual. But anyway, so Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and his new lady friend, Marjorie Cameron, they began the second phase of the Babylon working. And this basically consisted of Parsons reciting like passages and chants and whatnot, and performing sex magic rituals with Cameron, while L. Ron Hubbard still acted as the scribe. So there wasn't
corner.
Allegedly. I mean, he might have got a little action in there every now and then. But Parsons didn't take nearly as detailed notes during this phase, so we don't really know exactly what all this entailed. But they were, like I said, trying to manifest this like magical being that they thought was going to bring about this new age of enlightenment, and they called that a moon child. And this idea comes straight from one of Crowley's books, but the book that this comes from is actually a novel. and it's called The Moon Child. So, there's another connection to Crowley and his writings. Parsons thought this idea he got from a book, basically he was going to make manifest, and it was going to, like I said, bring about this new phase in human history. And there's a whole lot of stuff about a moon child and what that is. And I don't claim to understand any of it, but like I said, if y'all are interested in that, I go deeper into it into our in our series, but I'm kind of going to gloss over that because it gets kind of deep and weird. We're just going to keep on rolling. So, this is probably my very, very favorite part of the entire story. It's definitely the funniest. So we've talked about, some heavy shit, some dark shit. We're going to make it a little lighter here. So Parsons and Hubbard and Sarah, who remembers the 17-year-old sister of his first wife, they founded a company called Allied Enterprises. And Parsons invested his life savings, which was still part of his laundromat money at this point, into this company. And so basically, this is all just some elaborate scheme that L. Ron Hubbard came up with. And so his idea was to travel to Miami and purchase 3 yachts and sell them through the Panama Canal to the West Coast and then try to resell them for a profit, which makes no fucking sense to me. Like, can you not buy yachts on the West Coast?
Yeah.
So,
makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, only from L. Ron Hubbard.
But Jack Parsons kind of sounds like a wicked, gullible kind of a dude.
Absolutely. Like I said, like he was just kind of a dreamer. Like I think he looked for the best in people, and yeah, he was definitely gullible. He was very idealistic, and I think a lot of times he kind of missed the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
So, as they were kind of getting ready for this whole yacht buying trip, Hubbard had actually secretly requested permission from the Navy to sail to China and South America to, quote, collect writing material. But his real plan was basically just for him and Sarah to cruise around the world. So basically, he was trying to con Parsons and the government to give him money for him to just, go joyriding around the world on these yachts. Again, great stand-up guy. So Hubbard and Sarah, I mean, he's a schemer. I mean, he created Scientology and this yacht scheme. So Hubbard and Sarah abruptly left for Miami with all of Parsons' money, and they didn't tell Parsons they were leaving. So when he found out, he was furious. And at this point, this is when he started to suspect that there was a scam going on. Like all up until he was completely on board. But when they, disappeared in the middle of the night without his money, this is when he started to get suspicious. So he was calmed down because he called Hubbard on the phone. And I guess, again, super gullible guy. Hubbard kind of talked him off the ledge, and they agreed to be business partners still. And supposedly somebody that was in the house when he was on the phone with Hubbard said that Parsons ended the call by saying, "I hope we shall always be partners, Ron." So like this guy just couldn't quit Ron. So anyway, he was stewing on this for a while, and then he decided he was mad again. So he basically goes to Miami, tracks these guys down at this kind of harbor where the boats were at. And Hubbard and Sarah tried to flee on one of these boats. But when they're trying to get away, it hit a squall out in the water, and they had to return to port. And this part is great to me. Jack Parsons was convinced that this happened because he had performed a banishing ritual. And so he thought that that's why they hit this squall and had to come back. And so this is pretty funny. He wrote a letter to Crowley telling him about this whole situation. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read the quote just because I think it's hilarious. So he said, "Here I am in Miami, pursuing the children of my folly. Hubbard attempted to escape me by sailing at 5 p.m., and I performed a full invocation of Bartzabel, which is a Mars entity, I found out. His ship was struck by a sudden squall off the coast, which ripped off his sails and forced him back to port, where I took the boat in custody. I have them well tied up. They cannot move without going to jail. This is the good part. However, I'm afraid that most of the money has already been dissipated. Excuse me. So went through all this, did his little ritual, captured him, but all his money was still gone.
Damn, man, that sucks.
It's cold-blooded, man. So L. Ron Hubbard was ordered to reimburse Parsons for legal fees and the money he had given him, but Sarah persuaded Parsons not to pursue the matter any further, or she would report him for statutory rape since she was under 18 when they began their affair.
But
so
nobody would know me.
Yeah. So basically, Parsons lost all his money, lost his girl, had to, go back to California with his tail tucked between his legs.
Oh, man.
So, he kind of entered a dark period at this point, and he resigned from the OTO and he sold the parsonage, and he kind of distanced himself from occult activities at this point. But him and Cameron, which was his new woman, were married on October 19th, 1946. So that's kind of the end of that section of the story. So I don't know if you want me to keep going. I don't know what we're looking at time-wise, but I can jump ahead to kind of his death and the ending if you want me to.
Yeah, let's do the death and the ending.
Okay. So Parsons worked for a lot of different companies in this period. He kind of did freelance work for rocketry companies. He worked for Hughes Aircraft Company, like Howard Hughes, and he was investigated many times by the FBI during this whole stint for like his occult activities. And I'm not going to get into this because this is a huge rabbit hole, but there's this idea of the Collins elite, and this was like supposedly a secret government group that basically decided that this guy and Hubbard and Crowley were truly in contact with these entities, but these guys thought that they were not extraterrestrials, that they were like literal biblical hell demons, and UFOs and aliens all that were just like this mask that these demons were wearing. And basically these guys opened a portal with all these rituals and whatnot that allowed the UFOs, quote unquote, to come through. And that's why all this activity started, in the 40s when these guys were doing all this. So that's the super duper Cliff Notes version of that, but super interesting stuff.
Trying to free your mind, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. And by walking through it, my friends, head on over to www.deeperdown.store. There you will find some sick-ass threads, AI-inspired art on t-shirts, hoodies, flip-flops and cups, and motherfucking tote bags. I promise you, my friends, if you follow the rabbit, you will not be disappointed. You can also find _ down the dot rabbit hole _ on Instagram. He has thousands of followers, and he shows you deep down the rabbit hole on conspiracies, hauntings, and cryptids. I highly recommend you subscribe for $2.99 a month. Also, check out his store, upon checkout, enter code KevinsWeird18. There, my friends, you will get 18% off of your purchase. So please, I highly recommend and suggest to you to go check out his store. David is a good friend and he deserves the utmost respect, and I wish him nothing but success. But this is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so we go a little deeper into that in the series, but I mean that could be a whole series or episode of its own.
That could be a whole. I think you guys did like an hour on that alone. I think.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
close
because
to it.
we didn't intend to, but you know, the deeper you get into it, just the more talking points that pop up, and it's super interesting. So, after all this investigation and whatnot, Parsons and Cameron were going to go to Mexico for an extended trip. And it was believed that he was going to start working on rockets when he was in Mexico, and he was going to try to use this as like a stepping stone to get to Israel to run their rocketry program. So while they were preparing for this extended trip to Mexico was when Jack Parsons died. So he died on June 17th, 1952, when there was an explosion in his home laboratory. And in the explosion, Parsons' right forearm was blown off completely. His left arm and both legs were broken, and there was a, quote, gaping hole ripped in the side of his face. But he was still conscious, and his neighbors like drug him out of the rubble from this explosion. And he was still alive for 37 minutes, was loaded onto the ambulance and all that. And he was pronounced dead at 5:45. So this guy survived 37 minutes, basically with half of his body blown off, which is crazy. And allegedly his last words were, "I wasn't done," which everybody comments, that's kind of ironic with Jesus's last words being, "It is finished." And, this guy was into the occult and, all that weird stuff. So that's something that everybody brings up. But, there's a lot of conspiracy theories around his death. Some people say that he never would have been that negligent with his explosives and his materials. Other people say, that's just how this dude was. He, was criminally negligent, which kind of seems more likely to me, just knowing what we know about this dude, like blowing up toilets and whatnot.
Yeah, and the fact that he wasn't like safety conscious, and that's why he got pushed out of his own company. And
and he made a lot of enemies, like between the government investigating him several times. I mean, there was plenty of people who probably would have not minded getting rid of him. And
research, do you know if the those 3 cops were out of jail by that time?
So, yep, we're gonna hit on that a little bit since I teased it earlier. So, Marjorie Cameron, excuse me, his woman, said that she was astral projecting, and she saw that there was an explosive hidden under the floorboard of his lab, which, would seem to insinuate that he was murdered. And I mean, we can't argue with her. We don't know whether she was astral projecting or not.
No, we can't.
But anyway, one of the police officers that Parsons' testimony helped convict was released from prison like days before this happened. And so Cameron was convinced that there was some sort of government, police, whatever retaliation for Parsons basically convicting this guy. So, again, that's kind of the Cliff Notes version. There's a lot of weird stuff we could get into, but for time's sake, that's basically the long and short of it. Like we said, Parsons very well respected in like occult and esoteric communities, but a lot of his kind of scientific stuff has been reduced to footnotes, and I think a lot of that is because of just the weird shit he was into. So yeah, I mean, this is something that I could talk about for hours. I know I've probably bored you to death, but I tried to make it as quick as possible. So
I think we're only at like an hour, so
well,
you did pretty good on the
I
time part.
tried to make it as speedy as possible. Like I said, I mean, we did 3 full episodes on
exactly.
it,
so everybody listening, if you enjoyed the story, it goes a little bit more in depth on bizarre encounters. And there's 3 episodes, and they're all an hour and a half, I believe. And we just
the last
went
one
through the story in an hour. So.
Yeah, like you said, we go pretty deep in the Collins Elite stuff in the 3rd episode, which your listeners who like the Conspiracy Tuesday type stuff, that's getting real close to conspiracy type stuff. So I think your listeners would dig that part in particular.
So what do you think was the cause of it? Do you think it's a conspiracy for him to die, or do you think that he was actually negligent?
I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of one of those Occam's razor things. The simplest solution is probably the correct one. I think everything we know about this guy, it's pretty easy to believe that he just blew himself up. Like we said, there's a lot of people who would have, had beef with him, but it's just easier for me to believe that, he was negligent and blew himself up. Well, I mean, we know he was negligent. We've got, a lot of reports saying basically how he handled explosives. He was like so good at explosives and such an expert that he just wasn't careful at all. And, it just bit him in the ass one point. That's what I think.
For his death, Crowley came out and said something like that he was never really a part of his thing, right? Or something like that. Do you know?
So the whole Babylon working thing put like a big dent in his relationship with Crowley. Like it was basically Jack was like going rogue at that point. Like he was making all these rituals and whatnot, basically, making them up himself. And it was like outside of the normal parameters of like the OTO and Thelema and all Crowley's stuff. And so basically between him just going rogue and the whole L. Ron Hubbard thing, Crowley kind of said, this guy's an idiot, basically. And so he kind of distanced himself from Parsons at that point, but Parsons was still sending money to Crowley until Crowley died. So, yeah, but they definitely had a strained relationship toward the end of Crowley's death.
All right.
Or end of his life, rather.
Yeah. I for a second I thought you were gonna say that he died in 1947, which would have been the year of the Roswell crash, and 1947, that year comes up in a lot of shit. So
I think Crowley might have died in 47, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Parsons died in 52.
Right. I thought that's what, when you were going into his death, I literally was like, he's gonna say 1947. And then you were like 1952.
So the funny thing about that, the whole like Washington D.C. 1952 UFO sightings were like 2 weekends in a row. All these UFOs were sighted in Washington D.C. Like that was shortly after Parsons' death, and a lot of these like Collins Elite guys think that was basically a direct response to his death.
He died December 1st, 1947.
I thought it was 47. Yeah, I found that out in my research for all this too. So yeah, 47 pops up all the time.
He was 72. That's crazy.
Yeah.
1947 just keeps coming up. We talk about it in Conspiracy Tuesday 7. 1947 just keeps coming up
Well, I
on a
cannot
lot of
wait to
shit.
listen to that episode. It sounds like a good one.
Well, I'll throw this out there. 1947 is the only, so there's a curse on a river up here where 3 white people die every year at the least. And 1947 is the only year that nobody died on that river.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's interesting.
No, that's pretty wild. It sounds like you could do a whole episode about 1947 and 47
Yeah, I could.
period.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you
Yeah. Maybe I'll do maybe I'll do a presentation on 1947 for a convention someday.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. I'm not charismatic enough for that to speak in
I
front of a bunch
disagree.
of people.
Hey, if you did a
So-
presentation, I would come and watch and sit in the front row.
Oh. Well, is that everything that on Jack Parsons?
I mean, it's not everything, but I think we
Oh.
hit the high points, you know.
Right.
So,
he had children?
no. So
No
actually,
children.
Marjorie Cameron was pregnant at one point, and basically Parsons encouraged her to get an abortion. So like this whole like magical this whole magical child he was trying to bring about, it obviously wasn't like a real child. It was like some kind of, you know, magical entity or whatever, because you know, his Scarlet Woman was pregnant and he was like, nah, let's just take care of this. So
like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, which is probably a good thing that this guy didn't have any actual kids.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, that's the show. I absolutely enjoyed listening to you talk, Orin. You speak
I hope I
very
didn't ramble
fluently.
on too much.
No, you never do. It's always fun. I'm really glad that I asked you to come on, not only because I feel like I haven't talked to you that much in a while, so it was good to reconnect.
It's been too long. Yeah, absolutely.
So but yeah, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please go check out the 3-part series on Bizarre Encounters. You will not be disappointed. I absolutely promise you. I stand behind it. Everything that I'm saying right now, 110%. But with that being said, if you don't mind, Orin, remind them where they can find you and about the podcast.
Yeah, so again, I've been Orin Felix, one of the co-hosts of Bizarre Encounters podcast. You can find the podcast on any podcast platform. My co-host is Shane Jones. He also does Inquiries of Our Reality. Kev's been on that show before. So my partner, Jenny, she used to be on the show. You can find her on Instagram. It's 100% that witch, and there's some underscores involved. You find either the show or me and you can get to her. My personal Instagram for all this kind of crazy stuff is the Framework UFO. And then there's Instagrams for Bizarre Encounters and Inquiries and all that good stuff. So we're all easy to find. Definitely reach out. We're always looking to talk to people and share stories and hear stories. So get in touch with us. And Kev, thank you for having me on tonight. It is always a pleasure, and we have to do this again sometime. It's been too long.
Absolutely. So like I said, guys, that is the show. Please go follow them and check out their podcast. If you want to be featured on this show, it's where the weird ones are at gmail.com. Where _ the weird ones are on Instagram. I'm on Threads, still kind of learning that. There is a Discord weirdos only server, still kind of learning that too. But I'll figure it out. You know, it's all a learning process. Where the weird ones are on Facebook. You can contact me through any of those avenues, email or Instagram, probably your best bet right now at this moment. So if you have any crazy experiences, or you have researched something like Orin has, and that you are interested in sharing on the show, I am more than happy to talk with you about it. If you're trying to promote a book, definitely, I will talk to you about that as well. So with that being said, I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good night. Oh shit, I almost forgot to plug my Etsy. Go buy a t-shirt. Go buy some merch. It's etsy.com/shop/where the weird ones are. Yeah, I just put a new design up there. It's a gray alien. It's a mugshot of a gray alien. So just saying, it's real. It's a real picture. I'm just kidding. But no, there is a new design of a gray alien. I think you guys will be interested, and if you don't want to, that's fine too. But at least check it out. Keep the algorithm up on the store. Like, follow, share, subscribe. I was number 7 on the top 100 on Good Pods. I've been recently knocked out of the top 10, but that's okay. But like, follow, share, subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review. That I would appreciate. That's probably the best way to help this show grow. So again, I hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good night, whatever time you decide to listen to this or watch. Question everything and stay weird.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish.